first of all talk about this dream that Romeo has had, because it's a little bit of foreshadowing. Sorry, just trying to set up the camera. Okay, so in line 6, he talks about this dream. He says, "I dreamt my lady came and found me dead. Strange dream that gives a dead man leave to think. And breathed such life with kisses in my lips that I revived and was an emperor." So what is he dreaming about? Good, yep. So he dreams that he's dead. Okay, thank you. I swear I did it, but I guess I didn't. She kisses him. He is revived. And he comes. And okay, so he's just had this sort of, I don't know, kind of odd dream, but pleasant dream, right? Juliet's there. She kisses him, brings him back to life, and he is an emperor. This is definitely an example of foreshadowing because of what is going to end up happening later on in this act. We know that they are both going to kill themselves, right? So we know that he is going to end up dead. Okay, so then Balthazar comes in and Romeo's excited. He thinks Balthazar's like there to tell him how everybody's doing and what's going on. But of course we know that Balthazar is going to bring some different news than that.
Then she is well, and nothing can be ill. Her body sleeps in Keppel's monument, and her immortal part with angels lives. I saw her laid low in her kindred's vault, and presently took post to tell it you. Oh, pardon me for bringing these ill news, since you did leave it for my office, sir.
Is it e'en so? Then I defy you, stars. Thou knowst my lodging. Get me ink and paper and hire post horses. I will hence tonight.
I beseech you, sir, have patience. Your looks are pale and wild, and do import some misadventure.
Okay, so Balthazar says her body sleeps in the Capulets monument, and her immortal part with angels lives. I saw her laid low in her kindred's vault. So he's saying, like, I saw her get buried or get entombed, right? Not buried. And you kind of saw that in the movie. That's who that person was who was kind of like watching through the bushes or whatever. So how is this an example of dramatic irony? Balthazar tells Romeo, Juliet's dead. I saw her get put in the tomb of the Capulets. But what does the audience know? She's not actually dead, right? And that's dramatic irony, when the audience knows more than a character in the play. So it's dramatic irony because we know she isn't actually dead. Okay. Okay, so Romeo then says, I defy you, stars. He's basically challenging fate, right? Which has sort of caused all these problems for him, right? We had the idea of the star-crossed lovers at the beginning of the story. When he goes to the party in Act 1, he says, I fear some consequence yet hanging in the stars. So he talks a lot about sort of the like role of fate and how the stars influence your life. We talked about that a little bit in your journal. When you guys looked up like zodiac signs and stuff like that. So he again is referring to fate here. And he says, get me ink and paper and hire post horses. I will hence tonight. So he's saying that he's going to go back to Verona tonight. And Balthazar asks him to sort of be patient. Knowing what we know about Romeo, is that very likely? No, he's incredibly reckless. He's incredibly headstrong. He does not think about the consequences of his actions before he does them. So, all right, we're at the top of page 1132.
Thou art deceived. Leave me and do the thing I bid thee do. Hast thou no letters to me from the friar?
No, my lord.
No matter. Get thee gone and hire those horses. I'll be with thee straight. Oh, Juliet, I will lie with thee tonight. See for means. Thou art swift to enter in the thoughts of desperate men. I do remember an apothecary, and hereabouts he dwells, which late I noted in tattered weeds with overwhelming brows culling of simples. Meager were his looks. Sharp misery had worn him to the bones, and in his needy shop a tortoise hung, an alligator stuffed, and other skins of ill-shaped fishes, and about his shelves a beggarly account of empty boxes, green earthen pots, bladders, and musty seeds, remnants of packed thread, and old cakes of roses were thinly scattered to make up a show. Noting his penury to myself, I said, and if a man did need a poison now, whose sale is present death in Mantua, here lives a caitiff wretch would sell it. Oh, this same thought did but forerun my need, and this same needy man must sell it me. As I remember, this should be the house. Being holiday, the beggar's shop is shut. What? Ho! Apothecary!
Okay, so we'll stop there for a second. Okay, so Romeo at the top of this page after Balthazar leaves, he says, well, Juliet, I will lie with thee tonight. So what is he meaning by that? We know he's going to head back to Verona. If he's going to lie with Juliet, what do we think that he means? Right, he's going to go, right? The only way, like, if she's dead, the only way that he can be with her now is if he's also dead. Okay, so he is going to, this for number 3, he decides that he will go back to Verona to sell himself and be, okay, what does this tell us about his character? What's that? Yeah, right, very dramatic, again, reckless, all the things that we've been saying about him throughout the whole play, right? He really does not change very much as a character. He stays pretty consistent. You know, some people might want to get more information or, you know, confirm Balthazar's story or talk to the friar for, you know, like any of these things that he could potentially do. But he just doesn't think that far ahead. He just acts on his emotions right away. Okay. And so then he says, let's see for means. So he's basically saying, like, how can I do this? And he remembers seeing an apothecary's house. Now, an apothecary is basically like the equivalent of like a pharmacist today. It would be someone who would sell different, like, you know, potions and mixtures and like salves to put on your skin, you know, would just sort of be like a healer. And he tells us that this apothecary is very poor. So in line 40, he says, meager were his looks, sharp misery had worn him to the bones. In line 45, he says there's a beggarly account of empty boxes. In line 49, he says, noting this penury, and penury, if you look in your footnote, means poverty. So this apothecary is very poor, okay? Why is it difficult to get poison in Mantua? What's that? The law, yeah, it's against the law to sell poison, right? In line 50, it says, and if a man did need a poison now, whose sale is present death in Mantua, here lives a caitiff wretch would sell it him, okay? So, for number 4, it is illegal. And why does Romeo think that this guy will sell it to him? Yeah, this apothecary is extremely poor, right? And so he thinks, well, maybe this guy's gonna be poor enough that he's willing to sell me this poison, even though it's illegal. Okay, so now the apothecary comes in and he and Romeo are going to talk. Romeo is going to try to convince the apothecary to sell him the poison.
Who calls so loud?
Come hither, man. I see that thou art poor. Behold, there is 40 ducats. Let me have a dram of poison, such soon speeding here as will disperse itself through all the veins, that the life-weary taker may fall dead, and that the trunk may be discharged of breath as violently as hasty powder fired doth hurry from the fatal cannon's wound.
Such mortal drugs I have, that man's was law is death to any two that understand.
Art thou so bare and full of wretchedness, and fearest to die? Famine is in thy cheeks, need and oppression starveth in thine eyes, contempt and beggary hangs upon thy back. The world is not thy friend, nor the world's law. The world affords no law to make thee rich. That be not poor, but break it and take this.
My poverty, but not my will consent.
I pay thy poverty and not thy will.
Put this in any liquid thing you will, and drink it off. And if you have the strength of 20 men, it would dispatch you straight.
There is thy gold, worst poison to men's souls, doing more murder in this loathsome world than these poor compounds that thou mayst not sell. I sell thee poison, thou hast sold me none. Farewell. Buy food and get thyself in flesh. Come, cordial and not poison, go with me to Juliet's grave, for there must I use thee.
Okay, so does the apothecary end up selling it to him? Yes. Okay, he says, my poverty, but not my will consents. So he's like, I don't think that this is right, but I do need the money, so I will sell it to you. Okay, so Romeo has purchased this poison that will kill him basically straight away. And then he says that he is going to Juliet's grave, and that is where he will take it. Okay, so that is the end of scene 1. So what do you think that we should write for your summary?
That he has a weird dream about Juliet and becoming emperor, and then finds out Juliet is dead, and he's planning to go back to Verona and kill himself.
Good.
And before he goes back to Verona, he gets poisoned from
The apothecary.
apothecary.
Yep.
If he gets poisoned, then he's telling people.
What's that?
Doesn't he get poisoned from Mantua?
Yes, well, he's in Mantua, he gets it, yep. Okay, so, yeah, he finds out that Juliet has died, right, in big air quotes. He decides that he's gonna go back to Verona, to be with her. He buys some poison from an apothecary before he leaves. Right, you can kind of put that in whatever of your own words that you want to. Okay, so scene 2 is very short, so we'll just listen to the whole thing and then we'll stop and we'll break it down. But scene 2 takes place back in Verona in Friar Lawrence's cell. If you remember in Act 4, when Friar Lawrence is going over this plan with Juliet, he says, I'll write a letter to Romeo letting him know what this whole plan is so that he can come and get you out of the tomb. And so Friar Lawrence is going to be talking with Friar John. And Friar John is the person that he asked to deliver that letter to Romeo, okay? And we will see that that has unfortunately not happened, obviously, because in scene 1, Romeo doesn't know anything about it, right? So if he had already gotten the letter, he would have been like, oh no, she's just faking it, or he wouldn't have been as upset. So Friar Lawrence and Friar John are going to be your two characters in scene 2.
Scene 2. Friar Lawrence's cell in Verona.
Holy Franciscan Friar, Brother Ho. This thing should be the voice of Friar John. Welcome to Mantua. What says Romeo? Or if his mind be writ, give me his letter.
Going to find a barefoot brother out, one of our order to associate me, here in this city visiting the sick, and finding him, the searchers of the town, suspecting that we both were in a house where the infectious pestilence did reign, sealed up the doors, and would not let us forth, so that my speed to Mantua there was stayed.
Who bear my letter then to Romeo?
I could not send it, here it is again, nor get a messenger to bring it thee, so fearful were they of infection.
Happy fortune. By my brotherhood, the letter was not nice, but full of charge, of dear import, and the neglecting it made you much danger. Friar John, go hence. Get me an iron crow and bring it straight unto my cell.
Brother, I'll go and bring it thee.
Now must I to the monument alone. Within this 3 hours will fair Juliet wake. She will beshrew me much that Romeo hath had no notice of these accidents. But I will write again to Mantua, and keep her at my cell till Romeo come. Poor living corpse, closed in a dead man's tomb.
Okay, so Friar Lawrence welcomes Friar John, assumes that he's been to Mantua, right? Assumes that he's given Romeo the letter. And we find out that Friar John did not deliver the letter. Okay, so his little speech here is a little bit confusing. He says, going to find a barefoot brother out, one of our order to associate me. So he says he was going to go find another friar to go with him on this journey to Mantua. And that person was visiting the sick. That's something that friars would often do, right? They would go and visit sick people and people who were dying. Yes. And then, so this guy that he went to go find to go to Mantua with him, he says, the searchers of the town, suspecting that we were both in a house where the infectious pestilence did reign, that would be the plague, sealed up the doors and would not let us forth, so that my speed to Mantua there was stayed. So can anybody kind of guess what happened there? Yeah, Haley?
They got there and they were
Yeah, so basically because the friar had been out visiting sick people, the people in Verona assumed that they had, been exposed to this plague. Essentially, they got quarantined, right? They sealed up the doors and would not let them go out of Verona. So more or less, they got quarantined, which we can all relate to a little bit more in 2020 or 2021 than we could have before. So your first question in scene 2, what is his excuse? Essentially, he was quarantined. He couldn't leave. What is that? Not words. Verona. Okay, so Friar John never even got to leave Verona. They basically, obviously times were different then. So if there was some house where they suspected that someone had the plague, I mean, literally they wouldn't let you leave your house. So Friar Lawrence says like, okay, so then who took my letter to Romeo? And Friar John says like, I couldn't get anyone to send it. I couldn't get a messenger to you. Like they wouldn't let us do anything, right? And so he gives Friar Lawrence the letter back. Well, this is obviously very problematic because Juliet's about to wake up in a few hours and she's going to be in a tomb that is sealed shut, and she will suffocate. he has to do something, right? So what is Friar Lawrence's plan of action when he realizes that Romeo has not gotten the letter? Okay, so he's gonna use a crowbar to open the tomb. Okay, so he's gonna get Juliet out of the tomb, basically, right? So he's gonna go and get her out himself since Romeo won't be there. And then he says, but I will write again to Mantua and keep her at my cell till Romeo comes. Again, dramatic irony. We know that Romeo is already on his way to Verona, okay? So Friar Lawrence is gonna get Juliet out himself. And write to Romeo again. Okay. I do want to point out one little figurative language here at the end. Poor living corpse closed in a dead man's tomb. So a corpse is like a corpse, right? Like a dead body. So if we're saying living corpse, what kind of figurative language is that? Good, that's an oxymoron, right? Because how can you be living if you're a dead body? But she is, right? So this is an oxymoron, the last line there. Okay, so summary for this scene is pretty easy. Just Friar Lawrence learns that the letter was never delivered. Yes. Yes, of course.
First scene.
Uh-huh.
So when he's talking about his dream, anything like the play, he has to get through it like that.
What's that?
Anything like Romeo and Juliet play, doesn't he have to like just like a book?
No, like what'll end up happening, and we'll see it in scene 3, is that like she will try to kiss him like after he is dead, but it won't like make any difference.
No, not in the movie, the theater play. Like watching it live? Yeah.
No, the same things still happen, and like when you watch it live. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it could be a different play. Like there's a lot of plays that like are similar to this or like based on similar ideas. So that could be. Yes, that's very similar, but different obviously in the end result. Okay, so we're gonna jump into scene 3. Scene 3 gets a little bit complicated. It's another scene where you really need to pay attention to like who's in the scene, who's not in the scene, where they are in the scene. I will try to help with some really terrible drawings. So like here's the tomb, right? Like here's some columns. You know, whatever. Capulet. Okay, this is their tomb. So you've got Juliet in here, supposedly dead, right? And you've got Tybalt is in there. He is actually dead, right? But he's also, his body is also in there. Okay. And yeah, like I said, lots of people, there's like some trees around the cemetery, which various people will hide in throughout the scene. So just gorgeous. I really missed my calling as an art teacher. Okay, so here we go. Pay attention to the stage directions because they will help you as far as who is in the scene and who is not in the scene.
Scene 3. The cemetery that contains the Capulet's tomb.
Give me thy torch, boy. Hence and stand aloof. Yet put it out, for I would not be seen. Under yon yew tree lay thee all along, holding thine ear close to the hollow ground. So shall no foot upon the churchyard tread, being loose, unfirm with digging up of graves. But thou shalt hear it. Whistle then to me, as signal that thou hearest something approach. Give me those flowers. Do as I bid thee. Go.
I am almost afraid to stand alone here in the churchyard, yet I will adventure.
Sweet flower, with flowers thy bridal bed I strew.
Okay, so who's the first person to come into this scene? Okay, Paris. So Paris comes in, right? So we'll kind of put him here. And he has his page with him. Okay, and what does he tell his page to do? He says, under yon yew tree, lay thee along, holding thine ear close to the hollow ground. So shall no foot upon the churchyard tread, but thou shalt hear it. Whistle to me then a signal that thou hearest someone approach. Yeah, so he's gonna be a lookout. So the page is gonna like hide over here in the trees, okay? So like listen for anyone who might be coming. So Paris is the first person to arrive. Why is he there? Yep, he's taking flowers to the tomb, right? To mourn Juliet. Again, going back to this idea, like it does seem like Paris truly did love Juliet, truly did care about her, and is actually truly sad about this whole situation, okay? So we've got the page as a lookout. Paris is here putting flowers down. We don't have a ton of room, so you'll just have to write that down on your own. Number 1 is Paris, and he is bringing flowers, okay?
Oh, woe! Thy canopy is dust and stone, which with sweet water nightly I will do, for wanting that with tears distilled by moan. The obsequies that I for thee will keep nightly shall be to strew thy grave and weep. The boy gives warning something doth approach. What cursed foot wanders this way tonight to cross my obsequies and true love's right? What? With a torch? Mother me, night, a while.
Okay, so the page whistles, which notifies him that someone is coming. So Paris is going to also kind of step back into the shadows to see who it is that's coming, okay? And you can see from your footnotes that Romeo and Balthazar are coming. They have a torch, a mattock, which is like an axe, and then a crowbar, okay?
Give me that mat and the wrench iron. Hold, take this letter. Early in the morning, see that delivered to my lord and father. Give me the light. Upon thy life, I charge thee, whatever thou hearest or seest, stand all aloof and do not interrupt me in my course. Why I descend into this bed of death is partly to behold my lady's face, but chiefly to take thence from her dead finger a precious ring, a ring that I must use in dear employment. Therefore, hence be gone. But if thou jealous dost return to pry in what I farther shall intend to do, by heaven I will tear thee joint by joint and strew this hungry churchyard with thy limbs. The time and my intents are savage wild, more fierce and more inexorable far than empty tigers or the roaring sea.
I will be gone, sir, and not trouble you.
So shalt thou show me friendship. Take thou that. Live and be prosperous, and farewell, good fellow.
For all this same, I'll hide me hereabout. His looks I fear, and his intents I doubt.
Okay, so Romeo comes in. He tells Balthazar to take a letter to Lord Montague, basically explaining everything that has happened, right? And then he says, basically, don't try to stop what I'm about to do. He gives a couple of reasons that he wants to go into the tomb. What reasons does he give? Lines 29 through 32. Why I descend into this bed of death is partly to behold my lady's face, but chiefly to take thence from her dead finger a precious ring. So what's he saying that he wants to do? What does it mean to behold someone's face? To see her again, right? Like, I just want to see her one more time. What's the other reason? He needs to take a ring from her, okay? A precious ring that I must use for an important purpose. Okay, so Romeo says that those are his reasons for going in, just to see her and to take this ring. We know that those are not his true reasons, right? And he basically says, like, Balthazar, if you try to check on what I'm doing, I will tear you limb or joint by joint, right? So he's like, get out of here. I'm on the edge, right? And you got to leave me alone. Balthazar says, yep, I'll leave. But then he says to the side, I doubt what Romeo is really saying. Like, I don't think that's really his true intention. So I'm going to hide. So now, I mean, we've got a party in these trees over here. Balthazar is also over here somewhere. Like, it's very dark. They can't necessarily see each other or anything, but there's just like a whole group of people in the trees. Okay, so now Romeo is alone, or so he thinks, at the tomb.
Thou detestable monarch, thou womb of death, gorged with the dearest morsel of the earth. Thus I enforce thy rotten jaws to open, and in despite I'll cram thee with more food.
This is that banished haughty Montague that murdered my love's cousin, with which grief it is supposed the fair creature died. And here is come to do some villainous shame to the dead bodies. I will apprehend him. Stop thy unhallowed toil, vile Montague. Can vengeance be pursued further than death? Condemned villain, I do apprehend thee. Obey and go with me, but thou must die. I must.
Okay, so Paris recognizes Romeo, right? He sees him, and he thinks that Romeo's there to, like, do something bad to the bodies, right? He says, like, he is here come to do some villainous shame to the dead bodies. So he thinks that, like, not only did Romeo kill Tybalt, but, like, Juliet died because she was so sad about Tybalt. We know that's not true. But Paris doesn't know any of this, right? So Paris assumes that Romeo is there to, like, do something bad to, you know, these dead bodies. And so he confronts Romeo. So he comes out from where he was hiding and confronts Romeo and tells him that he's going to take him, like, to the prince to, you know, be executed, right? Because he's back in Verona and he wasn't supposed to do that.
Indeed, and therefore came I hither. Good gentle youth, tempt not a desperate man. Fly hence and leave me. Think upon these gone, let them affright thee. I beseech thee, youth, put not another sin upon my head by urging me to fury. Oh, be gone. By heaven, I love thee better than myself, for I come hither armed against myself. Stay not, be gone. Live, and hereafter say a madman's mercy bid thee run away.
I do defy thy conjuration and apprehend thee for a felon here.
Wilt thou provoke me? Then have at thee, boy.
Okay, so Romeo basically is trying to tell Paris to, like, leave him alone. He's like, I'm not here to do any harm to these bodies. Romeo doesn't recognize Paris, right? He keeps calling him youth, so he doesn't know that who Paris is. He doesn't, like, have any, like, recognition of, like, that this is Paris, okay? So they are going to start fighting.
Oh, Lord, they fight. I will go call the watch.
Oh, I'm slain. If thou be merciful, open the tomb, lay me with Juliet. In faith I will. Let me peruse this face. Mercutio's kinsman, noble County Paris. What said my man who my tossing soul did not attend him as we rode? I think he told me Paris should have married Juliet. Said he not so, or did I dream it so? Or am I mad, hearing him talk of Juliet, to think it was so? Oh, give me thy hand, me in sour misfortune's book. I'll bury thee in a triumphant grave. A grave? Oh, no, a lantern slaughtered you. For here lies Juliet, and her beauty makes this vault a feasting presence full of light. Then lie thou there by a dead man in sugar.
Okay, so the page is like they're fighting. I'm gonna go call the watch. So the page leaves. So now just Balthazar is in the tree, hiding. Okay. So they fight. What happens? Yeah, Romeo kills Paris. Romeo just like can't stop killing people apparently. Okay. And Paris, as he's dying, says, "Lay me with Juliet." This is finally now where Romeo realizes who Paris is, kind of vaguely remembers hearing that Paris was supposed to marry Juliet. And we see again him comparing Juliet to like light and her beauty to like a light. He says that it's not a grave, it's a lantern, because her beauty makes this vault a feasting presence full of light. So he's talking again about like how beautiful he is. And then he pulls Paris like into the tomb, kind of like in the doorway. So we'll just put little dead Paris there. Okay. R.I.P. Okay. So now Romeo is going to walk into the tomb and he is going to see Juliet lying there. And he's going to talk about how beautiful she still looks.
How often men are at the point of death that they've been married, which their keepers call a lightning before death. Oh, how may I call this a lightning? Oh, my love, my wife. Death, that hath sucked the honey of thy breath and had no power to upon thy beauty. Thou art not conquered. Beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks, and death's pale flag is not advancing there. Tybalt, liest thou there in thy bloody sheet? Oh, what more favor can I do to thee than with that hand that cut thy youth in twain to sunder his that was thine enemy? Forgive me, cousin. Ah, dear Juliet, why art thou yet so fair? Shall I believe that unsubstantial death is amorous, than that the lean, abhorred monster keeps thee here in dark to be his paramour? For fear of that, I still will stay with thee, and never from this palace of dim night depart again. Here will I remain with worms that are thy chambermaids. Oh, here will I set up my everlasting rest and shake the yoke of inauspicious stars from this world-weary flesh. Eyes look your last, arms take your last embrace, and lips, oh you, the doors of breath, seal with a righteous kiss, a dateless bargain to engrossing death. Come, bitter conduct, come, unsavory guide. Thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks thy seasick weary bark. Here's to my love. O true apothecary, thy drugs are quick. Thus, with a kiss, I die.
Okay, so Romeo talks about how beautiful Juliet still looks, and he says, you know, like, death has not sucked the honey of thy breath, has had no power upon thy beauty. How is this dramatic irony? He's talking about how she looks so, he's like, she doesn't even look like she's dead. She's so beautiful. But we know she's not dead, right? Like, come on, Romeo. So he talks, yeah, just about how beautiful she still looks. You know, gives her a last hug and a last kiss and takes the potion and dies. Whoops. Okay, so now we've got Romeo dead in the tomb. Okay. And at this moment, Friar Lawrence is going to enter the scene. Okay, he is not yet in the vault, right? He's just sort of like entered the scene and he sees like all of this commotion that, you know, the tomb is open and there's like, it looks like there's been a fight and all of this, okay?
St. Francis be my speed. How oft tonight have my old feet stumbled at graves. Who's there?
Here's one, a friend, and one that knows you well.
Bliss be upon you. Tell me, good my friend, what torch is yon that vainly lends his light to grubs and eyeless skulls? As I discern, it burneth in the Capel's monument.
It doth so, holy sir. And there's my master, one that you love,
Who is it?
Romeo.
How long have ye been there?
Full half an hour.
Go with me to the vault.
I dare not, sir. My master knows not that I am gone hence, and fearfully did menace me with death if I did stay to look on his intents.
Stay then. I'll go alone. Fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear some ill and thrifty thing.
As I did sleep under this yew tree here, I dreamt my master and another fought, and then my master slew him.
Romeo?
Okay, so Friar Lawrence comes in, he runs into Balthazar. Balthazar tells him that Romeo is at the tomb, and that he's been there for about a half an hour. Friar Lawrence, of course, knows that this letter has not been delivered, and so Friar Lawrence is like, crap, right? Like, I better get in there and see what's going on. He says, fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear some ill unthrifty thing. So he's like, oh no, like he's very scared. So Balthazar is still like, no, I told him I would leave, so I'm not going over there. So Friar Lawrence now approaches the vault by himself.
Alack, what blood is this which stains the stony entrance of this sepulchre? What mean these masterless and gory sores to lie discolored by this place of peace? Romeo, oh, pale, who else? What, Paris too? And steeped in blood? Ah, what an unkind hour is guilty of this lamentable chance. He stirs.
Oh, comfortable friar, where is my lord? I do remember well where I should be, and there I am. Where is my Romeo?
I hear some noise. May we come from that nest of death, contagion, and unnatural sleep. A greater power than we can contradict hath thwarted our intents. Come, come away. Thy husband in thy bosom there lies dead, and Paris too. Come, I'll dispose of thee among a sisterhood of holy nuns. Stay not to question, for the watch is coming. Come, go, good Juliet, I dare no longer stay.
Go get thee hence, for I will not away.
Okay, so Juliet wakes up, all right? Just like she was supposed to. And she says, where's Romeo? Like, I know where I'm supposed to be, so where's Romeo? And Friar Lawrence says that he hears some noise coming. He says that basically, their plan has been ruined and she needs to come with him because Romeo's dead and so is Paris. He says, I'll dispose of thee among a sisterhood of holy nuns. So he's like, I'll take you to like a convent, where you can live in safety. And then he says, stay not to question, for the watch is coming. Come, go, good Juliet, I dare no longer stay. So why is the friar so anxious to leave? What's that? Yeah, the guards are coming, and why would he be afraid of the guards coming? Yeah, right, like Romeo's dead, Paris is dead, Juliet's like somehow now alive. Like Friar Lawrence is kind of responsible for a lot of this and doesn't want to get in trouble. Okay, so that's your second question. Who is present when she awakes? It's the friar, and he won't stay because he doesn't want to get in trouble. Okay, so Friar Lawrence pieces out. Okay, so now we've got Juliet alive in the tomb. Paris, Romeo are both fresh, newly dead. Tybalt is, been dead a couple days. Okay, and she refuses to leave. She's not going to leave. Okay. Okay, let's see what happens next.
It's here. Oh, come, closed in my true love's hand. Poison I see hath been his timeless end. Oh, churl, drunk all, and left no friendly drop to help me after. I will kiss thy lips. Haply some poison yet doth hang on them to make me die with a restorative. Thy lips are warm.
Lead, boy, which way?
Nay, noise? Then I'll be brief. Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath. There rust, and let me die.
Okay, so a lot happens in just that little short time. So she sees that he has this cup of poison. She sees that he has drunk all of it, right? She like kind of hopes that there will be some that she can drink. She says, I will kiss thy lips, happily some poison yet doth hang on them to make me die with a restorative. So what's she hoping when she kisses him? Yeah, that there's some poison left on his lips that will kill her too. Okay, so that's number 3. She hopes there will be some poison on them. Okay. And when she kisses him, she says, thy lips are warm. And question 4 says, this is arguably one of the saddest lines in the entire play. Why are these 4 little words so meaningful? Yeah. Yeah, so he like just died, like she woke up like minutes too late, right? This could have all been avoided. So this is like the most terrible realization that she has, right? Because she was so close to being reunited with him. Okay, so then the chief watchman we hear coming with the page, and she hears this noise, and so she's like, I have to do something. She sees Romeo's dagger. She says, oh, happy dagger. This is personification, right? A dagger doesn't have feelings. And then she says, this is thy sheath, referring to her body. So the sheath is like what your dagger would sit in, like kind of like a holster for a gun. So she's saying that her body is the sheath because she's going to stab herself with the knife or the dagger. There rest and let me die. So that is a metaphor. This is thy sheath. Okay. So she stabs herself and falls. So now Juliet is dead for realsies this time. Okay. And the chief watchman is going to come in with the page and several other watchmen. And I mean, just like a bloodbath, like there's 3 dead people here that weren't dead 5 minutes ago. So the watchmen are all going to try to figure out what the heck just happened.
This is the place, there, where the torch doth burn.
The ground is bloody. Search about the churchyard. Go, some of you, where you find attached. Pitiful sight. Here lies the county slain, and Juliet bleeding, warm and newly dead, who here hath lain this 2 days buried. Go, tell the prince, run to the Capulets, raise up the Montagues, some others search. We see the ground whereon these woes do lie, but the true ground of all these piteous woes we cannot without circumstance describe. Here's Romeo's man. We found him in the churchyard. Hold him in safety till the prince come hither.
Here is the friar that trembles, sighs, and weeps. We took this mattock and this spade from him as he was coming from this churchyard side.
Great suspicion. Stay the friar too.
What misadventure is so early up that calls a person from a morning rest?
What should it be that they so shriek abroad?
The people in the street cried Romeo, some Juliet, and some Paris, and all run with open outcry toward our monument.
What fear is this which startles in our ears?
Sovereign, here lies the county Paris slain, and Romeo dead, and Juliet dead before, warm and new killed.
Search, seek, and know how this foul murder comes.
Here is a friar, and slaughtered Romeo's man with instruments upon them fit to open these dead men's tombs.
Oh heavens! Oh wife, look how our daughter bleeds. This dagger hath misstained, for lo, his house is empty on the back of Montague, and it missheathed in my daughter's bosom.
Oh me, this sight of death is as a bell that warns my old age to a sepulchre.
Okay, so everybody's coming in, right? They find Balthazar and they find Friar Lawrence hiding in the woods, so they bring them in. And they obviously look suspicious, right? Friar Lawrence has like a crowbar with him, which, you know, would be what you would use to open a tomb. Okay, Capulet sees that Romeo's sheath, right, his holster for his knife is empty. So might assume that Romeo maybe stabbed Juliet. We don't know, right? He's gonna assume that because he thinks that Romeo hates her and hates their family. Okay. And then Montague and some others are also going to come in.
Come, Montague, for thou art early up to see thy son and heir not early down.
Alas, my liege, my wife is dead tonight. Grief of my son's exile hath stopped her breath. What further woe conspires against mine age?
Look, and thou shalt see.
Oh, thou untaught. What manners is in this to press before thy father to a grave?
Seal up the mouth of outrage for a while, till we can clear these ambiguities and know their spring, their head, their true descent. And then will I be general of your woes, and lead you even to death. Meantime forbear, and let mischance be slave to patience. Bring forth the parties of suspicion.
Okay, so when Lord Montague enters, what do we learn? Who else has died? Romeo's mother, Lady Montague. Okay, and we find out because Lord Montague tells us she died from grief over Romeo being sent away. So we can assume that she died like earlier in the night, probably, right? Like not while all of this was happening. She didn't know about any of this. Okay, so she died earlier in the day, probably. Okay. Montague tells us. Yep. Okay, so then the prince is like, okay, we have to figure out what the heck happened here. And so he says, bring forth the parties of suspicion. So that would be like Balthazar and Friar Lawrence, because they were both like hiding in the woods, which seems a little suspect. Okay, so Friar Lawrence is going to come forward and he's going to say like, I'm gonna tell you everything, and I'm gonna like basically condemn myself, right? Like he's gonna say like all of the things that he's done. So he does talk for quite some time. He's just sort of recapping everything that has happened.
I am the greatest, able to do least, yet most suspected, as the time and place doth make against me of this direful murder. And here I stand, both to impeach and purge, myself condemned and myself excused.
Then say at once what thou dost know in this.
I will be brief, for my short date of breath is not so long as is a tedious tale. Romeo, there dead, was husband to that Juliet, and she, there dead, that Romeo's faithful wife. I married them, and their stolen marriage day was Tybalt's doomsday, whose untimely death banished the new-made bridegroom from this city, for whom, and not for Tybalt, Juliet pined. You, to remove that siege of grief from her, betrothed and would have married her perforce to county Paris. Then comes she to me, and with wild looks bid me devise some mean to rid her from this second marriage, or in my cell there would she kill herself. Then gave I her, so treated by my art, sleeping potion, which so took effect as I intended, for it wrought on her the form of death. Meantime I writ to Romeo that he should hither come as this dire night, to help to take her from her borrowed grave, being the time the potion's force should cease. But he which bore my letter, Friar John, was stayed by accident, and yesternight returned my letter back. Then all alone at the prefixed hour of her waking, came I to take her from her kindred's vault, meaning to keep her closely at my cell, till I conveniently could send to Romeo. But when I came, some minute ere the time of her awaking, here untimely lay the noble Paris and true Romeo dead. She wakes, and I entreated her come forth, and bear this work of heaven with patience. But then a noise did scare me from the tomb, and she, too desperate, would not go with me, but as it seems, did violence on herself. All this I know, and to the marriage her nurse is privy. And if aught in this miscarried by my fault, let my old life be sacrificed some hour before his time unto the rigor of severest law.
Okay, so he goes through all of this. He says the nurse knows about the marriage too. And he's like, if I'm responsible for any of this, like I am willing to accept the consequences. Like you can punish me with death.
We still have no need for a holy man. Where's Romeo's man? What can he say in this?
I brought my master news of Juliet's death, and then in post he came from Mantua to this same place, to this same monument. This letter he early bid me give his father, and threatened me with death, going in the vault, if I departed not and left him there.
Give me the letter. I will look on it. Where is the county's page that raised the watch? Sirrah, what made your master in this place?
He came with flowers to strew his lady's grave, and bid me stand aloof, and so I did. Anon comes one with light to ope the tomb, and by my master drew on him, and then I ran away to call the watch.
Okay, so the prince here is like hearing all sides, right? He wants to hear Balthazar's story. He wants to hear the page's story. Like he's trying to really get everybody's version.
Make good the friar's words. their course of love, the tidings of her death. And here he writes that he did buy a poison of a poor apothecary, and therewithal came to this vault to die and lie with Juliet. Where be these enemies, Capulet, Montague? See what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. And I, for winking at your discords too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. All are punished.
O brother Montague, give me thy hand. This is my daughter's jointure, for no more can I demand.
But I can give thee more, though I will raise her statue in pure gold, that whilst Verona by that name is known, there shall no figure at such rate be set as that of true and faithful Juliet.
As rich shall Romeo's by his ladies lie, poor sacrifices of our enmity.
A gloomy peace this morning with it brings. The sun, for sorrow, will not show his head. Go hence, to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned, and some punished. There never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo.
Okay, so at the end here, the prince basically says, like, look at what your hatred for each other did, right? Heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. Like, love is supposed to be this beautiful thing, and because of your hate between your families, it has killed both of your children. And he says, and I, for winking at your discords too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. So he says basically, like, I've also been punished because Mercutio and Paris are his kinsmen as well, okay? At the end here, Montague says that he's going to raise a statue to Juliet. Capulet says that he will put up a statue to Romeo as well. And so they have sort of buried the feud at this point, okay? The prince's last line about some shall be pardoned and some punished, like some people will get in trouble for their role in this and some people won't. We will finish the last bit of the study guide. You'll have time to finish it on Friday because I know we're running short on time. So make sure you hang on to it until Friday.